Imagine you woke up one morning and discovered that a library, one of the most important libraries ever built, had been quietly kept from you. Not burned, not destroyed, simply not mentioned. Pages withheld, chapters skipped. What would that tell you about the people who decided what you were allowed to know? Now imagine that library isn't made of paper. It's made of stone, carved into mountains, buried beneath desert sand, etched into cliffs 1,000 feet above the ground. Ancient structures that don't fit the story we've been told. Mechanisms that shouldn't exist. Languages no one on Earth can read. These things are real. They've been found, studied, debated, and in many cases, quietly set aside. This is not a conspiracy. This is archaeology, and some of it has no clean explanation. History is built from evidence. Pottery shards, burial mounds, written records, crumbling walls. Piece by piece, archaeologists and historians assemble a picture of our past. When civilizations rose, how they lived, and why they fell. For the most part, that picture is consistent, coherent, settled, but not entirely. Scattered across every continent, in deserts and jungles and underwater ruins, there are discoveries that don't fit neatly into the accepted timeline. Sites that are older than expected. Objects that are more sophisticated than they should be. Images that only make sense from an altitude no ancient person was thought to have reached. These aren't fringe obsessions. Many of them are studied by serious researchers at major universities. They appear in peer-reviewed journals. They generate real scientific debate. What they share in common isn't a single explanation. It's a question. What if we still don't have the full picture? What if, in our rush to organize the past into a tidy sequence, primitive, then developing, then advanced, we miss something or misread it? This video isn't about rewriting history. It's about looking honestly at what history has left unexplained, 7 discoveries, 7 genuine mysteries, and a question that gets harder to dismiss the more you look at them together. In 1994, a Kurdish shepherd in southeastern Turkey noticed something odd sticking out of a hillside near the ancient city of Şanlıurfa. He reported it. German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt came to investigate, took one look at what was emerging from the soil, and spent the next 20 years of his life excavating it. What they found beneath that hill overturned one of the foundational assumptions of modern archaeology. Göbekli Tepe, which roughly translates to pot-bellied hill, is a series of massive stone circles. Towering T-shaped limestone pillars, some standing 6 meters tall, weighing up to 20 tons, arranged in precise rings and covered with intricate carvings of animals. Foxes, snakes, vultures, wild boar, lions. The craftsmanship is extraordinary, the scale is staggering, and the date is almost impossible to process. Göbekli Tepe is approximately 12,000 years old. That makes it twice as ancient as Stonehenge, 6,000 years older than the Great Pyramid. It was built at a time when, according to the conventional timeline, human beings were still nomadic hunter-gatherers who hadn't yet discovered agriculture, hadn't yet formed permanent settlements, and certainly hadn't developed the social organization necessary to coordinate a construction project of this magnitude. No tools, no wheels, no written language. And yet, here it is. The question researchers keep circling back to is a simple one. Who built this? Not just physically, but organizationally. To quarry those stones, carve them, transport them, and erect them in geometric arrangements required planning, leadership, a workforce, possibly a belief system sophisticated enough to motivate that kind of collective labor. That sounds like civilization. But according to the official timeline, civilization hadn't started yet. And there's one more detail that deepens the mystery. Göbekli Tepe wasn't abandoned. It was deliberately buried. Around 9,000 years ago, someone filled in the site, carefully, methodically, with soil and rubble, and sealed it underground. Nobody knows why. Some researchers believe this was a ritual act. Others think it may have been preservation. Whatever the reason, that deliberate burial is part of why the site survived long enough for us to find it. Only about 5% of the site has been excavated so far. Whatever answers exist may still be waiting underground. No list of ancient mysteries is complete without it. And before you think this is the same story you've heard 100 times, bear with it, because the engineering questions surrounding the Great Pyramid have never been fully resolved, not even close. Built around 2560 BCE on the Giza Plateau in Egypt, the Great Pyramid of Khufu held the record as the tallest man-made structure on Earth for nearly 4,000 years. It stands about 140 meters tall, constructed from approximately 2.3 million stone blocks, each averaging between 2 and 15 tons. The largest weigh close to 80 tons. Those numbers alone are extraordinary. But what makes engineers and physicists keep returning to this site isn't the scale, it's the precision. The pyramid's base is level to within just 2.1 centimeters across an area of roughly 53,000 square meters. Its four sides are aligned to the cardinal directions with an accuracy of less than 1/10 of a degree. The internal chambers and passages are geometrically precise in ways that shouldn't be achievable with copper tools and manual labor alone. The Grand Gallery, a soaring corbelled passage inside the structure, is 50 meters long and displays a quality of stonework that modern engineers describe, without exaggeration, as extraordinary. And then there's the question of how. How do you move 80-ton granite blocks, quarried 300 miles away in Aswan, and set them in place with millimeter accuracy using ropes, wooden sledges, and thousands of laborers? Several theories exist. Ramps, water lubrication, counterweights. Each one answers part of the problem and leaves the rest unexplained. In recent years, researchers using thermal imaging and cosmic ray muon detectors have discovered anomalies inside the pyramid, voids, unexplored corridors, spaces that may be chambers yet to be opened. What's in them, no one knows. The pyramid has been studied continuously for centuries, and it's still revealing new secrets. The official explanation, thousands of skilled laborers, brilliant engineers, decades of construction, isn't wrong. But it's also incomplete. The Great Pyramid remains the most studied structure in human history, and it remains, in important ways, unexplained. High in the Bolivian Andes, at an altitude of nearly 4,000 meters above sea level, there is a site called Pumapunku. It is part of a larger archaeological complex known as Tiwanaku, believed to have been a major pre-Columbian city. The civilization that built it flourished sometime between 500 and 900 CE, although some researchers push earlier dates significantly. What makes Pumapunku remarkable isn't its age, it's the stones themselves. Scattered across the site are massive H-shaped stone blocks, each weighing between 80 and 140 tons, made from red sandstone and andesite. That alone is impressive. But it's the cutting that stops engineers in their tracks. The surfaces of these blocks have been finished with a flatness and smoothness that approaches machine tool quality. The angles are precise. The interlocking joints fit together with tolerances measured in fractions of a millimeter. Some blocks feature identical repeating grooves that are perfectly evenly spaced. Others have drill-like holes bored into them with a circular accuracy that is extremely difficult to achieve with stone tools. Researchers debate this constantly. Some argue that the builders use sand and abrasive compounds over long periods to achieve these finishes. Technically possible, incredibly labor-intensive, but achievable. Others point out that many of the angles and features would be almost impossible to replicate consistently without some form of template or precise measuring instrument. There's also a logistical mystery. The andesite used at Pumapunku comes from a quarry roughly 10 kilometers away. The sandstone from a quarry over 90 kilometers distant. Getting multi-ton blocks across high-altitude terrain, without the wheel, without draft animals capable of hauling that weight, is a puzzle that hasn't been convincingly solved. Pumapunku doesn't fit comfortably in the narrative of a civilization using Stone Age technology. And the civilization that built it left no written records, no explanation of how they did it, only the stones themselves, sitting in the Bolivian highlands, cut to a precision that still makes modern engineers ask questions. In the coastal desert of southern Peru, between the towns of Nazca and Palpa, there is one of the most bewildering archaeological sites on the planet. For thousands of square kilometers, the pale desert floor has been etched with lines, shapes, and figures, some geometric, some in the outline of animals, that stretch across the landscape with breathtaking precision. The Nazca lines were created by removing the reddish surface stones to expose the lighter soil beneath. In a landscape that receives almost no rain, no wind strong enough to disturb the soil, the results have been perfectly preserved for approximately 2,000 years. The individual lines are remarkably straight, some extending several kilometers without deviation. The shapes include trapezoids, spirals, and rectangles. And then there are the geoglyphs. A hummingbird with a wingspan of 90 meters, a spider, a monkey with a spiraling tail, a condor with a wingspan of 138 meters. Here is what makes them strange. Many of the largest designs can only be understood, fully appreciated as coherent images, from the air. From the ground, they are simply lines in the dirt. From altitude, they resolve into recognizable forms of unmistakable artistry. The accepted archaeological explanation, proposed by German mathematician Maria Reiche, who spent decades studying the lines, is that they served astronomical and religious functions, alignments to stars and seasonal markers, pathways walked during ritual ceremonies. This is plausible. The Nazca culture was clearly sophisticated, and ritual landscape marking was common throughout the ancient world. But the aerial viewing problem hasn't been entirely resolved. Why create something of such visual coherence at a scale that requires altitude to appreciate if no one could reach that altitude? Some researchers suggest the creators intended the designs as offerings to sky deities, made to be seen by the divine, not the human. Others continue to investigate whether certain elevated points on surrounding hills might have offered partial views. The Nazca lines are not dangerous knowledge. They're simply an ancient act of creation we haven't fully understood yet. And 2,000 years later, the desert is still holding on to their secret. Easter Island sits in the southeastern Pacific Ocean, more than 3,500 kilometers from the coast of Chile. It is one of the most remote inhabited places on Earth. And on this tiny island, a civilization that existed in remarkable geographic isolation created nearly 900 giant stone statues, the famous moai, many of them weighing over 80 tons and standing more than 10 meters tall. The Rapa Nui people, who carved these figures somewhere between the 13th and 16th centuries, worked with simple basalt and obsidian tools. They quarried the statues from a volcanic crater called Rano Raraku, where hundreds of moai, many still unfinished, stand embedded in the hillside like a stone army frozen mid-creation. The finished statues were then transported across the island to ceremonial platforms called ahu, placed precisely facing inland, their blank stone eyes overlooking their communities. The question that has fascinated researchers for decades is simple: how? The statues are enormous. The island has no large trees left. There were no wheels, no large animals, no obvious mechanical advantage. How did the Rapa Nui move 80-ton stone figures across volcanic terrain to precise locations? One long-standing theory suggested the statues were transported lying down on wooden sledges or rollers. But the island's deforestation, which oral traditions suggest was severe, cast doubt on the availability of sufficient timber. In 2012, archaeologists Carl Lipo and Terry Hunt proposed a different theory based on oral Rapa Nui tradition. The statues walked. By attaching ropes to the head and coordinating teams to rock the statue side to side while walking it forward, like moving a heavy refrigerator, they demonstrated that upright transport was not only possible, but efficient. Their experiment worked. But oral tradition also describes the statues being moved by spiritual power, mana, and the broader story of the Rapa Nui, a civilization that achieved extraordinary things and then collapsed, possibly due to the very deforestation their construction projects required, remains one of the most haunting cautionary tales in human history. In 1900, a group of Greek sponge divers sheltering from a storm near the island of Antikythera decided to dive into the waters below. What they found was the wreck of a Roman-era cargo ship, packed with bronze and marble statues, pottery, coins, and jewelry dating to roughly 60 BCE. A spectacular find. But the object that would eventually prove most significant was a corroded lump of bronze that nobody paid much attention to for decades. When researchers finally examined it closely, they found something that should not have existed. The Antikythera mechanism, as it came to be known, is a hand-cranked mechanical computer. It used a system of at least 30 interlocking bronze gears to track the movements of the sun, the moon, and possibly the known planets. It predicted lunar and solar eclipses with remarkable accuracy. It displayed the phases of the moon. It tracked the 4-year cycle of the Pan-Hellenic Games. It may have modeled the irregular orbit of the moon using an innovative epicyclic gear system, a concept that was not rediscovered in European mechanics until the 14th century CE. Let that land for a moment. A device made in ancient Greece around 2,000 years ago, using mechanical principles that were supposedly lost or unknown for 1,400 years after its creation. Subsequent X-ray and CT scanning revealed extraordinary detail about the mechanism's construction. The gear teeth were cut at precise angles. The workmanship was incredibly fine. Text inscribed on its surface, now partially decoded, described its functions in technical language. Who made it? The inscription suggests it may have originated on the island of Rhodes, possibly connected to the tradition of Archimedes or his followers. How its technology was apparently not replicated or built upon for over a millennium remains a genuine historical puzzle. Some historians argue that similar devices did exist, but simply haven't survived. Others suggest it may represent a lost branch of ancient technological development that simply ended. Whatever the explanation, the Antikythera mechanism transformed what we thought we knew about ancient Greek science, and it sits in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens today, a corroded bronze box that quietly insists we revise our assumptions. It has been called the most mysterious manuscript in the world, and for over a century, it has earned that title. The Voynich manuscript is a handwritten illustrated book made from vellum, cured animal skin. Approximately 240 pages long, though researchers believe some pages have been lost. Radiocarbon dating places its creation between 1404 and 1438 CE, likely somewhere in northern Italy. It was purchased in 1912 by rare book dealer Wilfrid Voynich, who gave it its name. Before that, its history is murky. It appears in a letter from 1639 and may have passed through the hands of Holy Roman Emperor Rudolph II. The book is illustrated with hundreds of drawings, plants that don't match any known species, astronomical diagrams with no clear correspondence to known star maps, human figures bathing in pools connected by elaborate pipe systems, and on every page, filling every margin, covering every illustration, text. Dense, flowing, consistent text in an alphabet no one has ever identified, in a language no one has ever decoded. Cryptographers have been attacking it for decades. The Nazis tried to decode it during World War II. American and British intelligence analysts studied it during the Cold War. More recently, computational linguists have analyzed it with machine learning algorithms, finding that it has internal statistical patterns consistent with natural language, suggesting it's not random gibberish, but they haven't been able to extract meaning. The theories range from the serious to the surreal. Some researchers believe it's a constructed artificial language created by a medieval scholar. Others argue it's a cipher, a real language encoded in an unknown system. A few academics have proposed it might be a hoax, an elaborate forgery designed to defraud a wealthy buyer. But the consistency of the text, the regularity of its letter frequencies, the way words are distributed across topics, the apparent logic of its structure, argues against a meaningless fabrication. As of today, not a single sentence of the Voynich manuscript has been definitively decoded, not one. The most studied mysterious manuscript in history, examined by some of the best cryptographic minds on the planet, remains entirely unread. 7 discoveries, different continents, different centuries, different cultures. Individually, each of them can be approached as an isolated puzzle, a quirk of preservation, a gap in the record, a question that might one day be answered with more excavation, more analysis, more time. But look at them together, and something starts to press against the edges of the conventional narrative. Not proof of anything in particular, more like a recurring pattern of incompleteness, of discoveries that sit at the boundary of what we think we understand about human capability and human history. The oldest structures we know were built by people who weren't supposed to be building anything. The most precise ancient engineering still baffles modern experts. Devices of extraordinary complexity appeared and then seemingly vanished. Messages were written that no one alive today can read. Images were created that only fully reveal themselves from an altitude no ancient human was thought to have occupied. What does this mean? The honest answer is, we don't know yet. But the pattern is worth sitting with, because science isn't a fixed conclusion, it's a process, and that process is still ongoing. Return for a moment to that hillside in Turkey. It is dawn. The light comes in low and gold across the limestone plateau, touching the carved stone T-pillars of Göbekli Tepe before it reaches anything else. The fox etched into one column seems almost to move. The vulture spreads its wings in the slanting shadow. Standing there, 12,000 years dissolve. There is no gap between you and the person who first pressed a stone tool against this rock and began to carve. They had a reason. They had a vision. They organized their community to drag enormous stones across rough terrain, to raise them up, to fill them with images of the world they saw around them. They were not primitive. They were not random. They were, by all evidence, purposeful, intelligent, and reaching towards something, some expression of meaning, some connection to the universe, that we have not yet found the language to fully describe. And then, when their work was done, or when the moment passed, or for a reason we may never understand, they buried it. They covered the site with deliberate care, sealed their creation underground, and left. For 9,000 years, it waited. In the dark, under the hill, perfectly preserved by the same act that hid it from view, until a shepherd's eye caught something in the earth, and the digging began. How many more sites like this are still waiting? How many more mechanisms, manuscripts, lines in the desert, stones cut with impossible precision, are still underground, still underwater, still unread on a shelf in a library somewhere, asking to be found? That is not a rhetorical question. Archaeology makes new discoveries every year. New scanning technologies reveal structures buried under forests and deserts that no one knew existed. New analytical tools decode materials and dates that were once impossible to determine. The past is not finished revealing itself, and if history has taught us anything about these discoveries, it's this. The moment you decide you know what happened, something tends to surface that asks you to look again. History is not a closed book. It is an ongoing investigation, and like any investigation, it is shaped by what evidence happens to survive, what questions researchers happen to ask, and what assumptions they bring to what they find. The sites and objects we've examined in this video aren't evidence of anything supernatural. They aren't proof that ancient civilizations had technology beyond our own, or that the past was radically different from the story we've inherited. They are something at once more modest and more interesting. They are genuine open questions. Open questions are not weaknesses in a field of knowledge. They are the engine of it. Every major breakthrough in archaeology began with someone looking at the accepted explanation and asking, but does this really fit? Every revision to the historical timeline, and there have been many, came from people willing to sit with the discomfort of not knowing. The mystery of Göbekli Tepe pushed back the origins of organized society by thousands of years. The Antikythera mechanism forced a rethinking of ancient Greek technology. The Nazca lines still provoke debate among serious researchers. These aren't embarrassments to the historical record. They are its most honest moments, the places where the record admits what it doesn't yet understand. You don't need to believe in hidden civilizations or alien architects to find these things remarkable. You just need to be willing to sit with the question, to resist the temptation of the easy answer, to look at a 12,000-year-old carved stone and think, someone made this, someone had a reason, and we don't fully know what it was. That, in the end, is the most human thing about all of these mysteries. They remind us that curiosity is ancient, that the desire to build something that lasts, to leave a mark, to reach toward meaning. These impulses go back further than we imagined, and that we are still, in some ways, catching up to the people who came before us. Keep asking, keep looking. The past is larger than we think.